So today I want to talk about one of the biggest moves or bold moves that I made in my life, I think. The first stop. I want to talk about one of the biggest bold moves that I have made in my life. And that was leaving the United Kingdom in 1989 to come to Chicago to work at Youth Outreach Services, which is a substance abuse agency that was on the Northwest Side at that time primarily, and some of the western suburbs. It's now expanded. And I came to be there because I was working in a community arts center. I was feeling um, a disconnect from my roots of youth work, which was really weird because I was doing a lot of work with young people. But I just wasn't feeling like I was really connected to the reason I got into youth development and youth work after I left college. And so I saw an ad in the paper that said youth workers wanted in the United States, and I applied. I didn't tell anyone, I just did it. And I was lucky enough to get an interview. I had to travel up to London. At that point, I had told my family, I didn't live with my family at that point, but I told my family that this is something I was considering, and they were quite supportive. And I went to the interview, and there was a bunch of us from all over Scotland, and there were some people from Ireland and from all parts of England. And we were interviewed in a group setting, which was completely new for me. I'd never interviewed in a group setting by two people from the agency. And I just remember that I felt like they really wanted us to answer the questions authentically. And so I think one of the questions was like, what is, your strongest suit or strongest attribute or something like that? And I talked about my honesty. And then I was asked for a an example of that. And I said, so for instance, if I didn't like the new haircut that you had, I would tell you that I didn't think the haircut suit you. And I was like, oh, I blew it because I think I was sort of, I didn't feel like I answered that question in a way that people would feel like, oh, that was an appropriate answer. But I think it was because later that month I got an invite to go and be it was a J1 visa, I believe. It's like a student visa for 18 months to work at this organization in Chicago on the western suburbs of Chicago. Substance abuse agency, primarily doing street outreach to meet young people where they were at and get them involved in services and counseling if they needed it. And so I was super excited. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then came the process of telling all the people that I cared about and loved and the goodbyes, which I think there was a lot of support and excitement around that. And it wasn't until that I recently a video that I watched with my mom again when I was interviewing my mom, where she talked about like how upset she was that I was leaving because she didn't think I'd ever come back, which was very strange because I was like, I had no intention of staying at that point. I was like, I'm just gonna 18 months, it'd be great. It'll look good on my resume. It'd be a really good, bold move to like go and do something in a new country, do something completely new. So it was a series of goodbyes. I remember the last goodbye being at the airport with my grandmother and my mom, my dad, and my brother, and having to, when you say goodbye and you go through sort of customs and you're like have to then do security. At that point, the security wasn't so crazy, but you turn around and you see the people that you're saying goodbye to, and I immediately got this overwhelm of sadness, and I just remember going through security and then going around duty free bawling like it was like a I think a release of all these goodbyes that I'd been saying for months at that point and realizing, oh, I'm not going on vacation. I'm going to live for at least 18 months in this new country, new city, and a new job. And I think it just hit me all at the same time. And I don't remember much about the flight. I do remember getting off the flight and I had like a big trench coat on and long clothes, and it was so hot and humid. I was like, what am I walking into? It was like so hot and humid, and I had completely the wrong clothes on. And I remember that someone from the agency was going to pick me up, a complete stranger, had no idea who they were. So, like, the first day of my bold move, I'm like putting basically everything in the hands of a stranger. And at that point, I knew I had somewhere to stay, but I didn't know where I was staying. I'd never seen it. I didn't know it happened to be a room in of this person that worked at the agency. And so they picked me up and they were really nice. They were welcoming. And then all of a sudden they said, I've got to go to a meeting. And so we can go back to the house. We'll drop your stuff off and then we'll go to this meeting. It was an AA meeting. They were doing this 12-step program. And I was like, okay, sure, sure. And I think I was on adrenaline because I had been traveling probably over 24 hours at that point because we had to travel from my parents' house to London and then, the flight over. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. And at that point, I haven't really eaten anything. I have not had much sleep, but I was like, okay, let's do that. She says, well, I'll go to the meeting and I'll just drop you off, and then you can wander around, and then we'll pick you up. So my first hours after this bold move were like, where am I and what am I doing? And why is it so hot? And it it was like this mixture. I don't know if you've ever had this when you're doing something completely new, but you have this mixture of like, did I make the right decision? Oh, I got something on my lip. Did I make the right decision? Did I did did I really do this? And along with like excitement about like what is possible, what's going to be coming up. And then the next thing I remember is that she picked me up with some of her friends. We went to a diner. And at the diner, it was like, and this happened to me when I first came to the States. I was like, there were too many choices on a diner menu. Like, I'm just used to like, you get eggs and toast and beans and tomatoes, and that's the way it is. And they kept asking me so many questions about over easy and not like, and even for sandwich was like, there were too many decisions. And I think I was on overload, so maybe I couldn't make any decisions at that point. So then I look out the window and I see two men in the alley with one man giving the other man a blowjob. And I was like, oh, I know which part of town I'm in. I know that the people I'm with right now are family. And I know that sounds really strange. That sounds like a very sexual act happening to me jumping to I found my community. Well, here's the thing. I didn't know at that point that where we were was the gay, lesbian, transgender part of town where most of the clubs were, where the young people used to gather on the corner at the Dunkin' Donuts there. And there was also a lot of um, people in AA who were also part of that community. And so what happened for me in that moment was this bold move I've made where I thought I was going to be alone for a really long time, that I wouldn't find my people for a long time. Somehow, the very first day, I managed to find my community. And I know it sounds really weird and it sounds really strange that that would be the way my first day of a bold move went, but that actually made me a lot more curious for the whole time I was here about what might happen if I just suspended this idea that things had to be a certain way. Because I thought I would be picked up from the airport, I would go to the new house, an apartment or room that I was renting, I would be able to settle in, I'd be able to rest up, and I'd be able to go to work the next day. That did not happen. My first day of my bold move was pick up, drop off, wait, eat, see an act that connected me to something that I didn't realize I needed to be connected to, and then realizing that the people around the table with me were all people who shared the same similar story to me. And so, all this to say is, I think when we are making bold moves, they don't always go exactly how we think. And we may be sort of, I had this big vision of the United States as a wonderful place of adventure, and it turned out to be that. Definitely that night. Um, and so I think about bold moves. Bold moves always involve community. They involve us being part of something that's bigger than ourselves. And sometimes those communities um, just arrive on our doorstep, and sometimes we they're part of who we are. So like I left a whole community in England, my family, my friends, the even um, the safety of knowing what happened or how to operate or who to talk to go all the way across to the United States, to Chicago, to work at a substance abuse agency where I had a like a an idealized vision in my head of what that might look like. But that first day, really realizing that you can find comfort in the most unusual places, but you always need to know where your people are and your community are. And so if this resonated with you, that you've made a big bold move and it didn't actually go the way you wanted, but maybe you found community or you found support, or you maybe even found challenges, because I was challenged as well by the people around me, is that you could maybe be interested in joining my monthly Bold Moves group, which is going to be a coaching group that I will be hosting. I will be facilitating, but it's a place for us to try out like what's the new bold move you want to make and get some support or have a sounding board from others who are in the group and have some curious questions asked by me to maybe move from like this idea that it's a bold move in my head to making it an action that you can actually operationalize, structure, measure so that you can move from just ideas to action. So if you're interested, you can like, subscribe to the channel because you'll hear more here about different bold moves that I've made in my life, things that resonated with me. Or you can go straight to the link and you can join the group. There's a link to a stand store that's mine, and you can join right there. And let's get together and make some bold moves.